he and Mike Labell were two different animals, and Gene was one of the boys, and Mike was the boss. He was the promoter, and the few times I only spoke to Gene maybe 4 or 5 times. It wasn't a whole lot, but I was very hell. It was my first territory, and this was Judo Gene Labell. So he and Red Shoes Dugan were two of the nicest men at that time around Los Angeles, and Judo Gene was that gimmick who lived it, but he's a very nice man, and yeah, he was always cool to be around, always cool to talk to. Mondo Guerrero put him over like $1,000,000 before I met him, so and it was everything he said. Just a very nice man, loved the business, but a badass when you didn't want to piss off.
Proteges were Ronda Rousey and Piper.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why. Judo Gene, I think again he was one of the boys, and you know the story about him and Bruce Lee. Apparently, we weren't there, obviously, but that makes sense. And there's a lot of great stories about Gene Labell with Bearcat Wright not wanting to drop the belt, and so they sent him to the ring, and then had Gene come out in a mask as the hangman or executioner or something like that. So he was a guy everybody respected and knew if it came down to kicking somebody's ass, it was going to be yours. So.
What is the Bruce Lee story for everybody, in case they don't know it?
What's that?
The Bruce Lee story.
On the set of the Green Hornet, Bruce Lee was being an asshole to the stuntman, and Gene, I think, shut him down or hooked him or did something and embarrassed him. Then he put him on his back, and that could have been it too. I think there's a couple versions of the story, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think even did a version of it. Did you ever see that movie? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
No, I need to see it.
Oh, okay, great movie, I think. But the deal was that Bruce Lee wasn't treating people with respect, the stunt guys and everything else. But Gene worked with him on the set of the Green Hornet, and they got to know each other. And Gene was a martial artist, and I think he helped Bruce Lee in some things too. Yeah, there was some heat there for a while, I guess. At least as the folklore stands. Obviously, you weren't there. I wasn't there, so we don't know what really happened. But that's the story, that Gene Labell supposedly put Bruce Lee in his place on the set of the Green Hornet, and I could believe that. He was the referee in the Ali Inoki match, so he was a pretty important guy and a pioneer along the same lines that I think universally anybody would say he was a legit badass.
The awesome thing, his grip. You put like the watermelon or whatever on your arm, he could pop it. Yeah, he had that grip.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that were fun to be around if you were on the right side. Like Danny Hodge used to go in the shower with his grip and just turn the faucets all the way to where you couldn't get any hot water or something, or break them off, or some ridiculous, insane strength that these guys had, that you wanted to be on their side if there was ever a fight, because if they hooked you, you knew what was going to happen.
The King of Kingsport, Bo James, says he choked out Steven Seagal. There's video floating around it.
Yeah. So he was, he didn't take a whole bunch of crap, I don't think. If he didn't like you, especially, Steven Seagal's that guy around Hollywood that maybe fabricates some of his martial arts skills. It doesn't take much to figure out, and I think karate and all that stuff, any of those arts or fighting, I think you have to on a regular basis to stay skilled. I truly believe you don't use it or lose it. And, I think it was amazing that Gene Labell could, I don't know if at this stage, how good he was at the quickness or anything else, but I still wouldn't want to mess with him.
Now, Meltzer was recently talking about judo, Gene, and you kind of mentioned it too, that Mike was hated, Gene was loved.
Right. Yeah.
Why?
That? Huh?
Why though? What was Mike?
Why? Because Mike was a
smarmy.
No, Mike was a smarmy, slimy snake. I got along fine with him because, again, I had no reason not to, but you could see the slickness and the lack of respect he had for not just the business, but the wrestlers, the boys themselves. I remember one time we had a coal miners battle royal, and there's something at the top, either a bag or whatever it was, and it fell down, and this was on TV, and he actually stopped and came out and had somebody climb up and put it back up. It was the damnedest thing, and they would have the time on the Olympic Auditorium right behind you, and they would just put the time for the TV that you needed to be out, and you'd finish at 0. And there wasn't a lot of people at the Olympics back then, but Mike was just a scum, or he was. I didn't know him that well, and I only spoke to him a couple times too when he would come down, but he barely came down to the locker room. And he barely conversed. But I think it was just the fact that he was more of the office side of things, and Gene was more of one of the boys. And I think back then it was especially for some people. They didn't want to be part of the office, and and Mike was that guy. He just kind of, I think he put himself on a different level than everybody else.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Facebook at the Hannibal TV for more live streams and videos. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Hannibal TV.